So we're live.
Morning, everyone. Hope everyone's well. Just give it a couple of minutes for everyone to join us, and then we'll get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first Teachmeet MFL Icons event of 2022. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning, and I hope you're all well. I'm going to start off by introducing the Teachmeet MFL Icons team. As you're probably already aware, Beck stepped down from the team earlier on in the year, and we have recruited some new team members. So I thought it'd be a nice opportunity for us to just introduce ourselves. First of all, I'm Hannah, and I'm going to be introducing the first two speakers this morning. Joining me, I've got Rosanna.
Hi, I'm Rosanna. I'm lead prac and head of Spanish at a school up in the northeast, and I'm going to be presenting a little bit later on today on the Golden Five in MFL.
Thanks, Rosanna. And we've also got Adam. Morning, Adam.
Morning, I'm Adam. I'm head of Learn Area for Languages, so that's Spanish, Russian, Spanish, French, Turkish, Latin, Classics at London, and a former lead practitioner.
Thanks, Adam. And we've also got Elena. Morning.
Good morning. I'm Elena Diaz. I'm a head of languages and consultant working in Northumberland.
Thanks, Elena. And we've also got Esmeralda joining us on the team, but unfortunately she's unable to attend this morning. So we've got a really busy schedule this morning, looking with different presenters. We've got 8 different presenters who are going to speak to us today. And we are really fortunate to have 2 fantastic sponsors of our events, Pupil Progress and Teachers Love Stationery.club. So joining us, first of all, I'm going to hand over to Brett from Pupil Progress to just talk us through what Pupil Progress do. Morning, Brett.
Morning, guys. Morning. I'll keep it really nice and brief. I know that you're here to discuss a lot of pedagogy. Super excited to be sponsoring the Teachmeet Icons for such a long time. I personally am really passionate about reducing teacher workload and increasing our students' potential. I'm going to share screen now because actually what I'm going to do is walk through the system for only a couple of minutes and just help you see what we're doing is really trying to embed our efforts into making sure that teachers can get back into what they really want to get into, which is creative teaching, marking, engaging with the students. So we're basically really simply taking you away from the pain of having to create spreadsheets for the data that you know you need to be able to communicate. We calculate the grade exactly as the exam board does. We've added all of the features that you would need as a teacher to track and monitor progress, to show you exactly what you need to teach. If I add marks, it will calculate the grade and highlight exactly how they're performing against their minimum target grades. It will show me how many marks they are away from their actual minimum target grade. And it will do a number of really clever things for me. It's going to show me how they're performing on each unit. I can even actually tag end of topic tests against specific topic areas. So those schools that are really screaming at you for QLA, we've actually taken that workload off you too. If I add now, I've added this test. It took me about 30 seconds to add it a moment ago. It's going to tell me how the students performed as a grade and across the questions, and give me a percentage breakdown of how they're performing in those topic areas you tagged against those questions. Again, this is not new information for you. We're not reinventing the wheel. It's giving you the information you know you need just really quickly. We've even got an individual student report that breaks down exactly how the student's performing, which allows you to be able to get that in the student's hands, increase their buy-in, increase their motivation because they know exactly what grade they're working at and why. And by the summer term, we're also going to have a parent and student portal. So this won't have to be a printed PDF. Hugely exciting announcement. We are actually partnered with Pixel. So if you like what you see here, this is something you can access at no cost to yourself. Every Pixel school gets 2 subject areas. So the analytics that you want to be able to present at subject level and at whole school level for any senior leaders on this webinar this morning, you will be able to see every single grade across the whole entire school, and each individual department area also gets their own analysis. So you don't have to feel your way through CISRA and 4 Matrix. You can actually get all of the data you need at your fingertips in a really, really consistent way. So pupilprogress.com, you can either click the Pixel logo and it will take you through to the landing page. It will give you all the information you need. There is no cost to actually getting involved. You don't have to get sign off because it's all inclusive of your Pixel package. And then you'll simply go through to the landing page. If I choose a school that I know is a Pixel school, I will be able to show you that your Pixel subscription is already there, and then be able to choose modern foreign languages and any other subject if you wanted to introduce us to any other schools. Bang, it is that simple. I'm going to stop sharing, otherwise a microphone and a screen, I'll be talking all day. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of today because I know it's fabulous free CPD.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brett. Thank you for joining us this morning. And as always, thank you for sponsoring our Teach Meet MFL Icons event this morning.
No worries, no worries.
Thank you. Also, just to let you know that we are broadcasting live to Twitter and YouTube. And if you do want to send any tweets today, we're on the hashtag TeachMeetMFL Icons. And our Twitter username is at TMMFL Icons as well there. So I'm going to now move on to our first speaker, that is Hannah Pinkham. And Hannah, if you want to get your slides ready so that they're ready to share, and I'll get those sharing in a minute. Hannah's going to speak to us this morning about how she teaches reflexive verbs. Hannah is Trust Assistant Principal for Research and Development in her trust, and she's passionate in ensuring that the joy of languages is accessible to all students. So I'm going to hand over to Hannah. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Sorry, I'm just having some tragic technical.
No, it's fine.
It's not like I haven't done this before. So hi everybody, I am Hannah Pinkham. I work as the Trust Assistant Principal for Research and Development in Languages. That's my title. For Dixon's Academy's Trust, obviously in the north of England. That's my Twitter handle, and you can email me if you have any questions about anything. So I'm going to talk about reflexive verbs, and the reason for this presentation is some kind of problems that I came up against when when I was learning languages at school. I was told that it's a verb you do to yourself, which felt just a bit gross, and I just didn't really understand what that meant. And then stupidly, I found myself continuing to use this really unhelpful definition with my own pupils, and they obviously didn't understand it. They didn't remember it because they didn't understand it. There was no clear link to English because obviously we don't use them in the same way. And it just felt really abstract and kind of nonsense. And I really hate those situations when you know what you're giving the pupils is not what it's the best that it could be. So I kind of set out on this little campaign to kind of clarify this, mainly for me, but also for my pupils. So first of all my little thingies aren't revealing, so it's all going to be a big reveal. Never mind. First of all, I worked out what is the actual definition. And for this, I really like going to English language learners dictionaries. So like Macmillan or Collins or Oxford, they have English language learners dictionaries for people who are learning English as a foreign language. And their definitions are always much clearer, well, for me anyway, than kind of ones aimed at native speakers. So really recommend going to those. So a reflexive verb is actually not a verb you do to yourself. Who knew? It is a verb whose subject and object are the same. And then there's this little additional bit of, so the object is always a reflexive pronoun. So the prior knowledge that pupils need to understand this clearly for me anyway, my pupils weren't able to access the concept of subject and object. For them, those were very different things. So I needed to think about how am I going to make sure that knowledge is there before I launch into some kind of reflexive verb journey. So I decided that I was going to start with English and work out the subject and object in English, then add on the French or Spanish, those are the languages I teach, subject and object, and then, only then, talk about reflexive verbs. So if your pupils do not know what a verb is and cannot confidently articulate what a verb is and recognize it in English and the target language that you're speaking, don't start talking about reflexive verbs. And it sounds really obvious, but sometimes curricula are not planned in that nice sequential way that we would love. So if you haven't got like a whole school, as in shared with the languages department, shared with the EAL department, shared with the English department, a whole school definition of a verb, not a doing word, then you need to make sure that that's in place first. So the definition that we use is an action or a state of being, which avoids that weirdness around the verb be, because, I mean, what are you doing if you're being? So first of all, very simply, I would start with pupils writing down the definition of subject and object. And I would reassure them that it doesn't matter if you don't know what this means now, eventually you will, don't worry about it. So they write it down, those are the definitions. Then, I mean, these are supposed to reveal in a nice way. It's very sad that they're not. So then I would get them to look at some examples in English. So I would start with A, just A on the screen first or under my visualizer. And I would talk them through using an I, we, you approach. So I obviously being me modeling and kind of talking at them. So I would say in the first sentence, Hannah is the subject, then enjoyed is the verb, then the film is the object. Then I'd reveal sentence B and get them to do a we, so questioning some pupils. Which is the subject, which is the verb, which is the object. And you can see probably now that I'm using really clear color coding. That color coding is going to flow throughout all the examples, and that just supports people's understanding, because this is quite abstract stuff. So anything that's going to help them to feel successful is really important. And then for C, I would get them to copy that into their books, and they would identify their own subject, verb, object, do a bit of cold calling to check that they've understood it. If at that point they haven't, then of course I would go and do more examples. There's no point continuing if they don't know what this is. This is really essential. And I would be emphasizing after that the difference that Hannah is not the same as the film. So the subject and the object are not the same. He and the children are not the same. Subject and object not the same, like that repetition over and over again. Then I would get them to write down the reflexive verb definition. So I've simplified it a little bit by not including the reflexive verb pronoun bit, because at that time it would kind of cloud their understanding. Again, reassuring them, if you don't know what this means, it's okay, we'll get there. And then we'd look at some carefully chosen examples of reflexive verbs in English. I say carefully chosen, obviously they should be, but you want these examples to exemplify reflexive verbs when you transform them into reflexive verbs. So don't choose like dancing, because you don't dance yourself. Yeah. Okay, so same thing again, we'd go through exactly the same thing, subject, verb, object, I, we, you, exactly the same thing. However, this time we would emphasize that Hannah and herself are the same. So these are reflexive verbs because the subject and the object are the same. He and himself are the same. I and myself are the same. Right. Then we'd have a little check for understanding. So at this point, before I launch into the target language examples, I want to be really sure that the pupils understand what I'm talking about. So I check that they understand this meaning. And if they don't, then we go back again and restart that cycle. Then we'd look at some target language examples. So I've got Spanish and French. I'm not a Germanist and I didn't want to insult your skills. So I stuck with what I know. So again, these aren't appearing as I'd want them to, but we would start with Je lave la voiture. We keep the English. We've got exactly the same color coding, really supportive, clear explanation. Where's the subject? Where's the verb? Where's the object? I would lead them through that. Then they would do one on their own. Obviously, we've got dad getting involved with the kids because gender stereotypes are not a thing. Then we'd emphasize that the subject and the object are different. It's exactly the same as English, very, very safe, secure. And then a little check for understanding. Really simply, which word means I, which word means car, which word means wash. And that's just to check that they really understand what we're talking about. Again, if they don't, we'd go back and do some more examples. Then I've got some Spanish examples, again, really carefully chosen so that they actually exemplify what I want them to exemplify in the next step. So the same thing again. The color coding also gets rid of that weirdness around like the a personal. So it doesn't really matter if we've got this weird at in there. It's just a chunk of an object. Who cares? Move on. It's not important to this particular learning. Then we would do another check for understanding, make sure they know what a reflexive verb is. If they don't, we go back, we reteach. And then using those carefully chosen target language examples from before as reflexive verbs. And this is where I think PowerPoint is really nice because obviously they appear in the same order, but whoa, the object is in a different place. This is amazing. And you can have that nice light bulb moment. So again, we've got the English, we've got the color coding, we've got the subject, verb, object. And this is why you're going to emphasize again that just like English, the subject and the object are the same. However, we've got this extra step of guided noticing. I don't want to leave it to chance. So I'd say to the pupils, what do you notice about the position of the subject and object? Which word means myself? And this is called a reflexive pronoun. And that's the first time they've heard what a reflexive pronoun is, because again, it's quite abstract and weird. So then we've got some Spanish examples, exactly the same thing. And then follow-up task, I mean, you probably know what to do with that. So I might do some more identifying of subject, verb, object. That might be in English, target language sentences, depending on how competent they are. Might mix it up with some reflexive or non-reflexive verb, help them to identify, how do you know if it's a reflexive, how do you know if it's not? And possibly, very possibly, I would move on to reflexive verb for other grammatical persons. But if they're not ready for that, then I wouldn't. That is the end. Thank you.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Hannah. Lots to think about there and a brilliant guide to teaching reflexive verbs. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
All right, enjoy the rest of the presentations, guys.
Thank you. Have a good day. And next up, we have got Rosanna, who is no stranger to the Teachmeet MFL Icons team, as she is one of our team members. She's also told us that she's lead practitioner and she is head of Spanish. So I'm going to hand straight over to Rosanna, who's going to talk to us about the Golden 5 in MFL.
Morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me present this morning as well. As it says there, I'm talking about the Golden 5 in MFL. So last year, our assistant head for teaching and learning, Alex Fairlam, who's also part of the Teachmeet Icons family for history, she's our assistant head for teaching and learning, and our lead practitioner for literacy, Jane Wild, launched a whole school literacy strategy to try and help to develop the culture that we are all teachers of literacy in school. And we've put together a range of strategies adapted from sources such as the Writing Revolution and tweaked for our subject-specific purposes to try and help close the literacy gap that's been exacerbated by the pandemic. There are many different strategies available, but we've picked 5 that we think work particularly well in our school context. And this is my take on them from an MFL perspective. So the first one that we have is directed reading. Our aim here is to try and teach, model, and scaffold pupils' reading so that they become strategic and knowledgeable readers. For this to work, we have our sort of main body of text down the middle of the page, and the teacher reads this out loud with the correct fluency, pronunciation, intonation, interspersing it with questioning, checking for vocabulary, understanding, and encouraging pupils to annotate on their copy of the text as they go. As you can see on screen there, on the left-hand side at the top, there's a Key Stage 5 example there for Spanish, and the pupils have gone through there. This was completed last year via Google Classroom. So they'd added in there a subtitle for each paragraph, and they've practiced their summarizing skills by summarizing each paragraph as we go as well. And then on the right-hand side, a Key Stage 3 example, that's Year 9 that we taught very recently. And again, they're using dual coding to go alongside each paragraph, translating small chunks from each paragraph, and then coming up with a summary at the bottom. The second strategy that we have is the Freya model. This is a graphic organizer used to support teaching Tier 2 and 3 vocabulary. And I found this one the trickiest one to adapt for MFL. If we were to do this for every single new word we introduced, we'd never get off this slide. So what I've thought about instead is using it to teach those kind of complex techniques, complex concepts in English that are a bit trickier. So for example, you've got the infinitive here, and a typical Freya model has a definition, the characteristics, examples, and non-examples. So I put obviously the definition in English, and then I've worked the other 3 boxes into Spanish to try and give them a better idea of what an infinitive is when I'm using that in my description of how to form different tenses, for example. The third technique that we've been using is the subject paragraph outline. This gives pupils a roadmap that they can follow when they're producing a longer piece of writing. And it's also a template that they can easily replicate themselves when they're completing independent tasks or in an exam situation. So the example that you've got on screen here is from Key Stage 5, teaching Como agua para chocolate. And it's to help pupils develop the paragraphs that they write as part of their literature essays. The idea is that the opening sentence and closing sentence of each paragraph are written out in full. And then along the dotted lines, you've got the notes that form the point, the evidence, the explanation, and the analysis for each paragraph. So they jot their notes down there, and then it kind of forms an overall paragraph when they come to writing their essay out in full. Our fourth strategy is kernel sentences. This is the idea of taking a grain of a sentence, the kernel idea, and getting pupils to expand on it using some, not necessarily all, of the W words in English, your what, when, who, and how, etc. So this works particularly well for those pupils that when you say, what did you do last weekend? And the answer comes back, I went to the cinema. Okay, who did you go with? When did you go? Where did you go? How did you get there? Why did you go? So that they end up taking that kernel sentence at the top there, fui al cine, and it becoming a much longer, more developed answer. El fin de semana pasado fui al cine en Newcastle con mis amigos en metro, ya que me encanta ver películas de terror. And they come up with a more complex sentence. Could also be used there at Key Stage 4, the speaking exam with the photo card aspect, encouraging pupils to develop their answers there. I know a lot of people use Palm W or Palm O in their teaching of how to describe the photo. You can see there again the idea of using those kernel sentences to getting them to add more and more information to develop their answers for the photo card. And then finally, our fifth one is because but so, or adapted into Spanish as porque, pero, and por lo tanto. This gives students a sentence stem and gets them to develop 3 complex sentences from that stem using a conjunction each time. It encourages more specific and focused thinking. The top example there is a Key Stage 3 starter activity that I've done. The first one at the top there is an example of how this works. So they've got their sentence stem, me encanta jugar al fútbol, and then they've got their conjunctions, porque, pero, and por lo tanto, to encourage them to develop those sentences. And then it's over to them. They've got a similar but different sentence stem, and it's their turn to have a go at expanding that into 3 different sentences. And the bottom example there is the sentence stem of a Key Stage 5 one. Again, I used that as a starter activity with them just to get them thinking. The por lo tanto bit's really nice in terms of getting them to expand their analysis and evaluation, which is something that I'm always trying to push my students to do more of in their essays. So that really helps with that. And for your more advanced learners, again, you might be wanting to add a bit of extra challenge by asking them to come up with synonyms for porque, pero, and por lo tanto to try and again add a bit more complexity and a bit more diversity into their language. So those are my golden 5 in MFL. I know some of them may be things that people have seen before, but it was I hope it would be a nice refresher if you have seen them before, and if not, some little strategies to take away to incorporate into your teaching to help literacy, as we are all teachers of literacy. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thanks, Rosanna. That was brilliant. Really good presentation there, with some key takeaways that I think all of us can use and easily implement into our own teaching. Adam's joining us now I'm going to pass over to Adam so that he can introduce our first keynote speaker of this morning.
Hello, everyone. Bernadette, do you want to start sharing your slides to get going? It gives me great pleasure to introduce Bernadette to the Teachmeet MFL community. Bernadette is somebody who is an MFL consultant. She's done a lot of work, basically joining the dots between primary and secondary, which I think a lot of us can agree there's a lot of work to be done with that transition phase. And as somebody who's a head of learning area in Hackney, I've reaped the benefits of that. So Bernadette's here to talk to us today a little bit about that transition, and also to really just describe the work that's led to Hackney being described as an oasis for language learning. So I'll hand over to Bernadette.
Okay, hi, good morning. Right, I seem to be having some difficulty sharing my screen. You've got my slides there. I wonder if you could put them up.
Get those up for you.
For me. That would be.
I think we've just lost Bernadette then. So while Bernadette reconnects and joins us again, I'll just give her a couple of minutes to see if we can get a log back up. Elena, would you be able to get her slides ready just in case, so that they're ready on the screen, and share your screen ready for when she rejoins? As we've already mentioned, our sponsors this morning are Pupil Progress, and we've heard from Brett, and these events wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, Pupil Progress. And later on, we'll be hearing from Sabrina at teacherslovestationery.club. You can see Bernadette's rejoined us there, so I'm just going to add Bernadette back in. Morning, Bernadette. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. No,
we're just trying to get your slides up at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah. Right. While you get them up, let me just say, I believe that 11 is too old for pupils to start learning a second language. The cognitive level of the work that we do with new learners in year 7 is much too low, I think, compared with other subjects. It's fine for children in year 3 and 4 to say j'ai un chat, but I think that's very limiting if you're an 11-year-old. And also I think it's the wrong time for children in terms of their own personal development to throw them into a language there. So the issue for me is not should we be doing primary languages, but how can we do it successfully and ensure that what they've done in primary is then taken on through secondary. Okay, right. Sorry about that.
I can share Bernadette's slides, so I've got them up here ready.
You have, great, thank you, Rosanna. Cheers.
Okay.
Thanks, Rosanna.
So, and there we go. All right, there we go.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rosanna.
Great.
Bernadette, can you see those okay?
Yeah, thanks.
Brilliant.
I just thought I should tell you a bit about the Hackney context, because it's obviously quite different to probably where a lot of you are working. It's only a small London borough, 58 primaries and 16 secondaries. And although 9 of our secondaries are academies, they're not part of a national chain. So in terms of what we could do in Hackney and working together, that was quite important, that they weren't, if you like, pulled by other forces involved there. The education in Hackney was so poor in the early 2000s that it was taken out of the responsibility of the local education authority and given to a not-for-profit Hackney Learning Trust. And the important thing is they were originally given a remit for 10 years to say you've got to turn around the education system in Hackney. I've just put a map there of the 32 London boroughs just to show you that Hackney is there on the just north of the river, but it's only small and it's surrounded by other boroughs. So Islington to one side, Haringey, Waltham Forest, Tower Hamlets. So in the past, parents would take their children out of Hackney schools at the end of primary to go to other boroughs. It's a very diverse borough. You see the figures there. And although there are parts of Hackney where people do have high incomes, etc., the gap between those is massive in the haves and the have-nots, really. Okay. Do you have to? Yeah, thanks. Just to let you know that in 2013, the Learning Trust and the head teachers met and decided, in preparation for the languages being statutory at 2014 for Key Stage 2, that every school would do Spanish as the first modern language. The reason for this was that in order to enable that smooth transition, but also to build on the work that had been done in primary so that pupils could achieve higher quality outcomes. That doesn't mean to say that that's the only language that is taught. And you'll see there our secondary schools also teach a wide range of other languages, not least, of course, Mossbourne, where Adam is. So it's a very rich language borough, partly which you'd expect in London. I know that isn't the issue and the situation that other people are in. Okay, so I wanted to, since the implementation of this, I just wanted to unpick some of the factors I think led to the success. Right from the beginning, we had a high status sponsor. So you might think in your own situation who that could be. The senior secondary advisor got the money and ensured it was successful. There was a long-term plan. You can't do these things saying in 1 year or 2 years. So there was a plan for at least 4 years. 2 of us were appointed as external consultants to manage and implement the initiative. A steering group was set up, which included primary and secondary heads who oversaw the work and held us to account what we were doing. There was free training for primary teachers, particularly on pedagogy, language upskilling, lesson modelling, whole school inset, etc., support and advice. And the primary heads released staff half a day every half term to have this training in preparation for delivering the initiative. So other things that we did when we introduced it, we trialled the introduction just with a small number of volunteer schools. Secondaries were involved right from the beginning. Some of them supported the primaries, allocating some of their MLA time, working with the primaries on carrying out assessment tasks, because clearly most of our primaries had never done any assessment in languages before. We wrote a Key Stage 2 scheme of learning, working with the teachers. We've got lesson plans for every lesson over the 4 years. We were insistent that all primary schools started with year 3. When I worked in another local authority before, we started with year 6, and that doesn't work because you've got to embed that into the primary first before you can actually build those links with the secondaries. So we insisted on that it was a year 3 start. We continued to have joint CPD with primary and secondary together, and then some annual events through the year. We have a Hackney Hispanic Week, a sharing of good practice, which we have in January. And then we have a meeting with the primaries and secondaries to look at work. Is this work that we think is appropriate for year 6 or year 7, and share that understanding as well. Okay, so on then transition. What sort of things did we want to transfer then to the secondary schools? So what we've done, we've developed objectives from the Key Stage 2 National Curriculum Programme of Study, and we say this is what that means, these 12 objectives over Key Stage 2, this is what they mean in each year. This is what we need you to cover between each year. So all schools are required to use them, all primaries. The primary schools have a tracking document on SIMS where they track the progress of pupils from 3 to 6. And then each primary school submits where they think their pupils are at in year 6, in the year 6 so those can be carried over to the secondary school. And the Association of School and College Leaders produced last year a really useful transition toolkit. They produced it in Spanish, French and German, and it's well worth using. That covers things like what grammar, what phonology and what vocabulary have the primaries covered, so that can also be transferred to the secondaries. And then I also transfer other information about who's teaching those pupils in the primary, the numbers that will come from every primary school into the secondary. Although that is transferred to the secondary, I find that heads of department don't always get given that information. So I pass that to the heads of languages. And we also have a Spanish award, which primaries apply for, and we monitor and we assess them at different levels. So we inform the secondaries about the quality of the provision in primaries as well. So then on transition, how do we carry out that transition? We've set up hubs for every secondary school with their main feeder primaries. the joint activities have been planned. Obviously, the last 2 years that's been very difficult to do, but before that, a number of our secondaries train language ambassadors to teach primary lessons. They teach those. We have joint lesson observations and joint projects, and the photo there is a primary and a secondary school coming together. I run Erasmus language classes in Madrid, and that's the two of them coming together, having a joint school in Madrid. They're there in visiting their partner school, and then the Spanish data for every year 6 pupil is submitted and then is transmitted to the secondary school, and only one school in 2021 didn't submit that data. And then we are very lucky in having a data team in Hackney Education. They transfer the data electronically for every year 6 pupil in Hackney that is going to a Hackney secondary school. It's just interesting to know that in 2022 there was only 30%, in 2002 rather, only 30% of pupils from Hackney secondary schools transferred to Hackney, from Hackney primary schools transferred to Hackney secondary schools. Okay, so the other thing which I would very much encourage people to do on this, you can't go on this journey by yourself. So look for allies, look for people that can support you. We found great support from the Spanish Embassy Education Department. I know the French Institute are very supportive. The Goethe Institute are very supportive. The British Council will also support you. We've been involved in projects with King's College London. We're starting on a new one now. Work with Essex University. They're great research into primary languages. We used to work with the Arsenal Double Club, which scandalously Arsenal has closed down. The Wallace Collection asked us to do a workshop with them, to develop a workshop for year 4, looking at the Velázquez in the Wallace Collection. We've got ourselves involved in the Sorolla exhibition. It was on a few years ago. We bring in external performers, events. Those guys there are from the mariachi band, who are just great at getting the kids up and dancing, etc. We've got some local restaurants, Cuban, Venezuelan restaurants, take children there. Our local cinema will put on Spanish films to take pupils to. We've involved parents. We've got a photo there of a parents' class. We've run some classes for parents so they can learn Spanish and help their children. Also, they've helped with money raising events, etc. So just look for that external, that community support as well, I would recommend. Okay, so things that the primary schools had to decide themselves, how they would roll out the initiative. Some chose just to start with year 3. Others said, no, we want to do it across the whole of Key Stage 2, and we'll all teach the year 3 curriculum, which is fine. Some have brought in Spanish specialist teachers, especially those who work across, we have a number of federations of 3 primary schools, and they have one teacher working across those, and that's worked because the teacher's then been really part of the school. Others have had class teachers teaching, so need to do a lot of training with them, obviously. In the past, a lot of primary schools have applied for Erasmus Plus funding, so staff could take part in language courses. And we've insisted all schools have a staff meeting so that all staff can be involved. How can they reinforce the learning on a daily basis? So I just wanted to then to give you some ideas in the next one about some of the things aren't transferable. You're not all working in those small London boroughs, but things that you could do which are transferable. And I think people need to look at. It's ideal, I think, with a MAT where you've got primary and secondary schools, that you could work together and develop a scheme of learning from age 7 to 14. We haven't managed to do this in Hackney. When I first raised this with secondaries, they said, no, we're not prepared to do that. We've got our own schemes of learning, so we'll take it from there. So if you manage to do that, well done to you. If your senior leaders are thinking about it, make the point it's not a quick fix. They need to have a plan over a number of years. Ensure that you have a high status person who's taking it on and driving it forward. You need to give training and support particularly to primary colleagues. In Hackney, we've used external consultants, but in a big MAT, you could have a designated team working across a number of schools. They're supporting them. Agree on what knowledge and skills that you want them to develop in primary to bring into secondary. Obviously include explicitly the showing progression in grammar and phonics, and use the ASCL transition kit, which is there. The link there is to it. And some other things, I would say start small and with willing volunteers. So if you're in a MAT, start with some schools that want to go for it, that will be enthusiastic about it. Run joint sessions for primary and secondary colleagues so that you build up that trust in each other's expertise. Ensure that teachers can observe, so year 7 teachers can observe in year 6 and vice versa, so they begin to see what each other's doing, how they can support each other. If you're a secondary, invite staff and pupils to language events that you're having, for example, European Day of Languages. Have language ambassadors who can go and teach lessons and deliver them in primary schools. We've also found that some of our primary pupils have also been to secondary schools, and they have delivered lessons as well, which they've loved doing, of course. And then I know that ASCL have been working with an agency called 6 into 7, where they've started developing some transition work. So it'd be worth you looking into that. Obviously, that's an external agency, which I assume schools would have to pay to do, but that would help with that issue of data transfer. And I know that is there already. And then just the last one, just to show you that what has been happening in the last few years in Hackney. Since 2017, our numbers being entered for GCSE have risen, and also the numbers being entered for A-level. So that it's been on quite a trajectory going up, even though our pupils who started in year 3 are only now in year 10. So we're hoping to see a rise and a development on that, even though we think that languages have been impacted quite heavily by the COVID, and will affect some of the entry numbers, I think, particularly in Key Stage 4. So yeah, so that's my last slide on that. So there you are. Hope that's been a bit useful to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Bernadette. Really appreciate that. And I think it's just that joined up thinking that I think just helps really skyrocket and has so many tangible, excellent outcomes. So moving on now, we're going to move to our second sponsor for the event even, which is teacherslovestationery.club. And here to talk to us about that is Sabrina.
Hi, Adam. Thank you. Okay, hi, my name's Sabrina. I'm the co-founder and co-owner at Teachers Love Stationery Club, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our boxes, but also we've released a new range of planners, which I'd like to showcase today. So we started out because my husband and I like subscription boxes. We currently subscribe to a snack box and a gin box, and when they arrive, it's kind of like getting ourselves a monthly little present that we look forward to. And I really like stationery, and I looked out there for stationery boxes for stuff that maybe I could use, maybe some of it I could use for school, but there didn't really seem to be anything aimed particularly at teachers. So we decided to set our own monthly subscription box service up. So our monthly boxes cost £12.50, but you don't have to get them monthly. You could get them bi-monthly or quarterly. And they're roughly A4 size and about 2 centimetres in depth. So when they arrive, they go straight through your door. You don't have to worry about getting one of those sorry you were out forms from the post office. And please do check out our social media, because this weekend our February boxes are being showcased by everyone who purchased them. We particularly have an active Twitter followership. And the theme for that month was Lunar New Year. So there's lots of beautiful red and gold and tiger themed items in there. So as I mentioned before, we've actually started our own range of teacher planners because, again, I get my teacher planner every year and I end up just ripping chunks out of it because I know I'm not going to use it. I don't want to have to lug this massive thick planner around. And there's never enough notes pages, and I always want lots of notes pages. So we have a focus group at Teachers Love Stationery Club, and they're from different phases, different parts of the UK, and we ask them what they want from a teacher planner, married up with what we want as well. And we've come up with a range of what we think are very pretty and very budget-friendly planners. And I'm going to show you the different covers we have available, hopefully showcase some of the inner pages, and also show you talk through the different prices as well. So I'm just going to change my camera angle. Here's our first planner. So the first planner design is Bright Forest, which is lovely green foliage design. And the reason we have a big space here is so that we can personalize your planner for you, and that is included for free. So we have this clear plastic cover, which will help keep your planner looking smart right through the year. And also, as you can see, there are little metal corner protectors both on the front and on the back. Here's your metal corner protector. So we have this space on the front for personalisation. So you can send us your preferred name or school name that you use. And we've got a range of fonts and colours of vinyl that you can have that done in. So Bright Forest. We also have Cherry Blossom. These are very pretty. Vintage Orchid. Again, all of these have the corner protectors and the plastic covers. Cool Geometric, which is kind of a gold colour with black. And we also have Rosé Marble and Midnight Galaxy. So I'm going to first show you some of the inner pages in the Rosé Marble because all of our planners are available as day per page or week per double view. And we've slimmed down the contents of this planner so it really is just what you need and none of that extra nonsense that you end up not using. There's an inner pocket on all of our planners so you can put any extra bits of paper or notebooks or whatever in there. There's a short section at the front with some password pages, personal information, page to put your timetable in, and then we get straight onto our calendars and long-term planning, which includes a year at a glance from 2022 up to 2025, because some of our part-time colleagues asked for that. 12 pages worth of month overview, which can start when you want them to, because depending on where you are in the UK or the world, you might have different start times for your year. Then we've got a section with some notes pages. It's good old plain line notes pages, but also we've included some Kernel notes style pages as well, if you prefer to use Kernel notes. And last but not least, well, actually, second to last but not least, this is what our week per view page looks like. So you've got Monday to Friday, and then your notes section here, or a little to-do list, whatever you want to put in there. And again, you can fill your own dates in depending on if you're in a different part of the country, or a different country, or starting at a different time of year, or if you're part-time, you don't waste loads of pages. And at the end, we've got your good old assessment record, about 30 pages of that. So as I've mentioned, all of our planners come in either week per double spread or day per page. And the insides are all exactly the same, apart from with the day per page, we have this layout here. So you've got 6 periods, which you can change and edit how you want. We've left this first box fairly clear, so you can write what you want in there. So for example, I might have mentor time and then 5 periods, and then sometimes I have after school activities. There's a section at the bottom for the activities and notes. And again, you can fill in the date, day and date as you please, so that you're not wasting any pages. So those are our planners. Just last briefly, these are the sort of thicknesses. As you can see, this planner, when I've compared it to other ones that I have, is much more slimline and easy to carry around. Obviously, our day per page one is a little bit thicker because there are 200 days in the school year, so there's 200 pages in there, whereas the week per double spread has 40 double pages in that section. So the week per double page planner is £20, and the planner with the page per day is £22.50. And we're also doing matching accessory packs. So depending on which colour design planner you choose, there is matching washi tape, decorative stickers, a notebook and a to-do list. And a pack of those 4 items is an extra £10. And as I mentioned, personalisation is included. So you can get, if you don't want to spend loads, you can just get the planner for £20. Or if you want to go all out, the maximum you're going to pay is £32.50 for the day per page planner and the accessory pack. So please do check that out on our website. And we've got a discount code MFL 2022 for you to use. And you'll get 10% off anything in our shop, including the planners.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. That was brilliant. I mean, planners, oh, don't get me started. Mine's an absolute mess. So fantastic. So moving on to our next keynote speaker now. This is somebody who anybody who's on Twitter will see just kind of lurks around providing support to people, giving things like just a really, really positive person. So I would like to introduce you to Margarita Mortimer. She's a former lecturer at Surrey University. She's an examiner and a head of Spanish. And like I say, it's continuing on with that theme of transition, looking at the more lower down year 7 style students. So I'll hand straight over to Margarita.
Thank you very much, Adam. Can you hear me well? Okay, brilliant. Okay, so first of all, I just want to say very briefly that I have actually done the opposite to what most teachers do. I was teaching at Surrey University and a sixth form college over a long time, just teaching sixth form. And then I decided to jump back into secondary school. So, obviously for me, that was actually just 3 years ago, just before the pandemic. So starting teaching year 7, although I'm quite sort of established, experienced teacher, it was almost like feeling like an NQT. So it was quite scary. So I started, to realize that I needed to find ways to improve my pedagogy. So I started to, to go around, I think it was actually through the language show online when it was actually the first lockdown, that I started to think about, oh my God, there are so many people out there doing amazing things. I became like a dinosaur. I felt like I really needed to improve. And so I started then to join Twitter, and it's been the most amazing thing for me, because I met people like Adam, Elena Diaz, everyone really, everyone like Joe there, Esmeralda. I can't really name everyone, but everyone has been such an inspiration. So I feel really blessed that I've been actually part of that group. And then through the group, obviously everyone kept on talking about Gianfranco Conti and his EPI ideas. So I started to be interested in the EPI journey. So I went through, I started to investigate a little bit more his ideas. And he was doing courses online at that time because it was lockdown. So I went to a course organized by Bath University, one of the sort of online courses he was doing. And I thought, actually, I really totally agree with his ideas about how the language acquisition happens in the human brain. So EPI means extensive processing instructions. So what he actually says, if I'm quoting correctly, is that when we learn a foreign language, it's the same process that when we learn a mother tongue. So basically, we learn through our senses. So we learn through our ears, our eyes, our smells. Everything comes into us through our, all our senses. And it is virtually is through listening and first and reading second that we actually acquire the language. And then, so if we look at the process here, he's also talking about the principles of the long-term and the short-term memory. So basically, everything that all our students are learning through all the senses, and for the language to actually become a part, or the structures to become part of our brain and be well established, they need to go from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. So through the process of metacognition. So Gianfranco Conti and lots of people who are using the sentence builders, and the, people like Esmeralda and people like Stefano Piagiani, Vanessa, all sorts of people in the Twitter group who are using sentence builders. They are following this idea. So the idea is that for anything that we do in class to be worthwhile, it has to go from the modeling stage to the awareness, to the receptive process, structure, expansion, autonomy, rotonization, and then spontaneity. So for us to become masters in the language, it takes a long process. It's not just something that happens overnight. So our job, or my job as a teacher was, and as a head of Spanish in the school, was actually to try to create a new scheme of work and create units that will actually represent and follow this pedagogy. So my idea then was actually, this is quite good, from Simona. So Simona, thank you for that graphics, amazing. Simona says that what we need to do is follow this process. So modeling, then awareness, then a receptive, then a structure production, then expansion. And then the last 3 stages is when the learners become really confident. So I've been applying that to all the teaching I've been doing in year 7 since I did the EPIC course, which was, I think it was in March last year. And I then now move on to other years, like year 8, year 9, I'm carrying on even up to 6th form now. My 6th form, they're now also using the EPI methodology. So what have I done? So this is actually an example of what I normally do. So what I have put together is just a unit that I've been using with year 7s. So obviously we don't do that over just 1 hour. This is more like, like the whole unit, if you want it, like 3 or 4 hours worth of teaching. Okay. So I always start with retrieval, because for the students to actually retain in the long-term memory, they need to have retrieval. So I start with an activity like that, where the students can actually, they have to be forced to remember at the beginning of the lesson. They have to remember anything that we've been doing, like describing someone, hair, eyes color, use a sentence with me gusta, describe a person in your family, translation. So this forcing them to actually concentrate on a good starter that has got retrieval. Now, sometimes I also, most of the time, I also put interleaving. So I will put questions or activities that they will also have done in the previous units. Okay, so then they'll have to really keep on, working on the long-term memory. Now, because my school hasn't got a lot of budget, I wasn't very lucky to be able to get into subscribing to sentence builders or any website that costs money. So I have to be resourceful and create my own sentence builders. So this is an example of a sentence builder that I've been creating for this unit. So I got now sentence builders. In the summer, I created sentence builders for all the units for Key Stage 3, Year 7, Year 8, and Year 9s. And I keep the principle of the sentence builders that they have to be very, very, very streamlined. They will have to have structures like verbs, objects, nouns, and always put opinions, and also challenge structures. So how do I use the sentence builders? At the beginning of the lesson, they all have the sentence builders for the unit. It has got everything they need to know. So any student who is finding difficult to write, because in year 7, there are some students who are struggling with concentration and writing, they have the sentence builders. They got it there. They know that we're going to be using it all the time. And I print them in color, so it's nice and colorful, and they got it there. Then I start using the sentence builder for choral repetition. But I don't just say me, and then they have to repeat, or mi hermano. I don't do that. I give them full sentences. I start with chunks. So I say, tengo dos hermanos. and they have to write down the translation in English. Then we do a couple of sentences like that. Then I start to build it up more difficult. Tengo dos hermanos que se llaman Pedro y María. So I started to get sentences already from day number 1. And then when they're actually done maybe 5 or 6 sentence builders in the mini whiteboards, then they start to write their own sentence builders and telling each other to translate each other, the sentence builders. So they're doing translation, chunking, oral repetition. They're actually practicing speaking, they're practicing listening. So this is a brilliant activity for them after they've done the starter. This is really helping them already to, they're working in pairs, they're working, translating, speaking, doing all the skills they need. Then sometimes I do also this activity afterwards, or any other listening activities. So it could be the faulty echo, it could be the bingo. They love the bingo activity. That anyone who knows about these activities in Twitter, they're very popular. But this one, I like it a lot. It's from Danielle Warren, and they love it because they have to listen and compete with each other. So thank you, Danielle, for this. So I start by saying any of these words, and they have to compete. There are 2 columns at the bottom, 1 for each student. And basically, they tick in different color pens what I say. The quicker they tick, the winner they are. So then at the end, they count how many ticks they got each, and I get the house point. So they love that. So it's very, very hands-on, and they really got fighting almost over the paper. It's really quite amazing, especially the boys who are normally quite, hyperactive. They get really engaged at this moment. It's really, they love it. And then there's another activity for listening, because obviously, as I said, listening is the key activity for me. I always start with listening. Since I've been doing that, I have noticed a big change in the students' behaviors, attitude, motivation. So this activity, I do it as well. It's a sort of starting more to be a more productive activity, not just listening, but productive as well. So they have to understand the structures as well. So I say the words in the missing gaps, they have to write it down. Or even better, I give them this in pairs. One person reads the answers, the other person has to complete the gaps, okay? And then they swap over with different texts. And basically, they have to then translate the sentences as well. So you can use this activity not just for listening. So it's quite productive. You can even use this to then ask them questions, like reading comprehension questions on the listening as well. So you're using the same text for 3 or 4 activities. So you can spend an hour, doing 4 or 5 good activities, and the students can be learning a lot and be engaged. So these were the answers to those questions. So one person has got the answers, the other and is reading the answers. The other person has got to complete the gaps. And then when I actually feel that they really got their listening and they are completely, capable of understanding most of the chunk words from the sentence builders, I move into reading. So for the reading activity, I start with basic reading, where they have to then, again, is all receptive. At the moment, they're not writing so much. It's on the receptive stages, yeah? And they have to match up the pictures with the descriptors. And then one of them, I'll start again to get them do activities that they could be really fun and competitive. So each of them, they write a sentence, not a number, just a sentence on a piece of paper. And they have to go around the classroom guessing each other the sentences. So then it's again choral repetition, is listening, is receptive, they're understanding, they have to understand each other's sentences. If they guess correctly, okay, it's a guessing game, but at the end of the day, they're repeating their understanding, and they are priming, which is what we're trying to do at this stage. We're priming the content and the structures. So it's all about getting them ready as you would do with your child when he's a toddler. A baby doesn't speak the language until he's normally 2 years old, but that doesn't mean they're not understanding. So it's exactly the same. So, at this stage, they're just starting to speak, but they're actually the speaking is more like reading. They're not necessarily being able to build their own sentences yet. It's more on the receptive, but they're starting to be more productive than in the listening stages. So then I move on to the next stage when they start to be more productive. So this stage is really when they need to know and understand the structures. So here there is an awareness. This is the beginning of the awareness. So the rock climbing translations are very popular. So all the students love it. So basically I give them sentences in English above. They have to translate them into Spanish. They don't need to know the vocabulary because the vocabulary is on the table, on the rock climbing table. And they just have to go and climb the rock. They have to write it down. So it's quiet in time. So after all that speaking and buzzing and working in pairs, it's really important that they have a processing time when they're quietly getting on with the work and really absorbing all the sentence builders. Do they know this? Can they transfer this? And then these are the answers. So I show them the answers later so they can actually see, for visual learners, how it works, and they can see how the sentences are built. So they get an awareness of structures, not just before we were concentrating on sounds, on listening, on phonics, on structures, auditory processes. Now we're actually on the mental stages of receptive awareness and being able to actually understand what they've been actually saying to each other. Yes. So another structure that I quite like as well is to start to do translation. And the translation with the dice, this is from Simone, I think, as well, is really a good game because you're adding an element of time and competition. So they have to keep on rolling a 6. If they get a 6, they're allowed to translate. So they're in pairs. Meanwhile, the other person is translating all the time. So the winner is the person translating the paragraph. So I normally do it, with any translation. But this is one example of a translation that I'm using for this unit. So they have to translate these sentences first. So before they do the rolling of the dice, they have to translate these sentences using colors. So tengo, and then underneath I have, and then they have to find in the second column, they have to find the word a brother, un hermano. Third column, who is called, que se llama Juan, and is 14 years old, y tiene, and then 14 años. So basically they do the activity first. Again, it's like rock climbing translation. And then I remove the rock climbing translation and I just leave the bottom bit. And then they use the dice and they have to translate the 6 sentences as fast they can while the other person is rolling the dice up to 6. If they get a 6, they get a stop and then the other person starts translating. So you are now starting to work on the processing stages. They have to be able to understand and they have to be able to translate. So the first stage is the mosaic translation. Then I remove the mosaic translation and they have to use the dice to translate the 6 sentences in pairs, competing with each other. And of course, there's another one that is is from Gianfranco Conti from the Language Gym, which is actually you are removing part of the text. Here they have to understand the structures, and every time you are removing more and more. Yeah. So basically, at the end of the text, you are actually just leaving a few words left. And it's quite a challenging way to translate, really. And again, they're checking the processing and awareness. This is also a pyramid translation, which they do in 3. So it's another variation of the rock climbing and the mosaic. So you have got students, again, one is a referee. The referee has got all the answers. Yeah, and the other person, the other two, they are competing. They have, if they make a mistake, they have to start from the beginning, translating into English. So you got 7 sentences. Tengo un hermano. Tengo un hermano y una hermana. Tengo un hermano y una hermana. Mi hermano se llama Juan. So they have to keep on translating until they get to the bottom. The winner is the one getting to the bottom. Yeah. And then the final stages is actually when they start to do production. So the production is leading to independence and obviously, to become masters in the language. Now, the scaffolding is the bubbles. So in the bubbles, I give them the language I want them to use. So they know that I asked them, you need to describe yourself, to talk about our teachers and your favorite subject, and describe your family. So those are the 3 tasks. Now, for the 3 tasks, I give them the bubbles to start with, and then in other lessons, I can actually remove the bubbles. So I choose to show you what they look like with the scaffolding, but you can remove the bubbles or even just give them 2 or 3 bubbles. Yeah. So basically, this is when they become more independent, and the more practice they do with the listening and the reading activities and the fun games that they really all have a purpose, they become more engaged and they become more able to actually do this without any scaffolding. I just want to show you what I've been doing. This is thanks to Elena. So Elena, perfect timing. Elena Diaz was talking about the keys. So I have actually adapted all Elena's Diaz keys into year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11, 12, and 13. So what I put in here is because in my school, we use the language, a different kind of language to grade them. We talk about aspiring, expecting, and outstanding. So I have actually linked together the outstanding, expecting, and aspiring. And basically, I have put in here what are the keys that they need to know on that unit. And also, I do that for all the units. So after Elena Diaz and after the EPIC course, I've been starting to think a lot more about scheme of work. So this was my old scheme of work. This is now what I'm aiming for, which is based on Gianfranco Conti. And basically, what the idea is that you spend one hour modeling, then receptive, then structure, then explanation if you need it. And then you have end of unit test, or in week 5, you have a test. Although you're having tests all the time, really, because the way I teach and the way that EPI works, you're testing them all the time, really. But based on that, in our school, we've been actually creating this Spanish curriculum roadmap, which is like an intent. So on the left-hand side, I got all the universals, which is the same as Selena Diaz keys, all the keys. So in year 7, they have to achieve, by the end of the year, they need to know the I form of the verbs, 3, I think I said 5 irregular in present tense. They need to be able to give opinions. They need to be able to use link words, and they need to be able to use some basic time markers. Then in year 8, they need to be actually having past tenses and immediate future. In year 9, so you understand. So it gets, this is the intent. So I'm building my curriculum now from the bottom year 7 all the way up to year 13. You can see that there is retrieval and interleaving of topics, but also you could see all the keys, which are the universals that Gianfranco Conti called them. I call them the keys as well because I got used to with Elena Diaz. And basically the idea is that the students know that this is the assessment, this is what they need to know. And for every topic, they are capable of actually, because we're coming back to these universals. In every topic, they will be having opinions, with the sentence builders. They will be having time present tenses. They will be having some irregular. They will have all this. And since I started using EPI, I just wanted to show you the effect of EPI on my ERA students. So obviously last year we was with COVID, we couldn't really have a very accurate assessment of how they're doing. But you can actually see that this is data analysis of ERA students since year 7, since I think this was after Christmas. This was actually in the summer term, the middle column, and this is now currently. So exceptional, it has gone out of 207 students, we got now 111 students who are performing on exceptional compared to 49 last Christmas.
Wow, that's amazing, Margarita.
So I just feel really quite pleased that, you know, I really have been part of the Twitter group and I've been embracing EPI, even though some people say, well, you know, does it work, does it not work? I mean, I'm a bit of a sort of a believer that you have to use what works for your students. So I definitely think that EPI works. And what really makes it exceptional is that students are motivated, they want to learn. And I do believe actually that through the sentence builders and the listening is what really has changed my lessons. So I now just start always with sentence. Well, they have always an activity that is like a sort of retrieval, always a retrieval and interleaving. But then I always start with the sentence builders.
And you can see, I mean, looking at this data, it's obviously having a massive impact on your students. So well done to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been fantastic. I really enjoy it now. And I'm looking forward. And the kids said to me, Miss, we really enjoy Spanish. It's our best subject.
Yeah, there's no better
place, and there? I think it's, you know, it's credit to the fact that you can actually, if you teach in a certain way, you can engage the students a lot more, really.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your contribution and for
thank you.
You know, it's great to see how things are done in practice as well, so we can then go and try them out. And thank you so much for the mention. Always super proud.
No, pleasure. I'm glad you're feeling better too.
Thank you. So I'm going to welcome Connor, who's here with us today to talk about practical ideas for maximizing success in reading and listening exams. So, you know, something that's going to come in really handy as exams are getting closer. Connor's a head of MFL at a comprehensive school in London, and he teaches Spanish, German, and French. And he's also a GCSE examiner, so he knows what he's talking about. And he's also interested in metacognition in the MFL classroom. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Connor's got to say. And I'm going to start writing things down as soon as he starts. Over to you.
Thank you. So this presentation is just to show some strategies that we have used in our department to make the reading and listening exams hopefully a little less off-putting to students. We teach very, very mixed ability students. We have students from a grade 9 to a grade 2 or grade 3 at target grades. And we were really having issues with reading and listening exams. The results were not at the same level as the writing exams and the writing and speaking. Students were reporting, finding them just completely off-putting. A lot of them would give up. It was really turning students off languages. And so we decided to look at what specific skills maybe we weren't teaching our students and how we could put them, maybe embed them into our curriculum a little bit more. So I'm going to talk through just two today. And the first one is the idea of coping with unknown vocabulary. So this is a huge, huge thing that puts students off. And they'll walk into a reading and listening exam, they will see texts that look nothing like the vocab they have learned in class. And it really can be off-putting if you don't know how to cope with it. So one thing we try to do with our students is to train them explicitly to make them realize the exam boards do this deliberately. You are not expected to start at word 1 in a text, read through it like you would an English text. Instead, you treat it like a puzzle where you use what you do know to figure out the answers. A lot of the time, it's often key words or high frequency words that are needed for the answer rather than specific random pieces of vocabulary. So we decided to use we decided to use that specific skill. We identified a lot of key words that come up in exam papers that are often needed to figure out the answer. And then we decided to explicitly teach our students how to use what they know in a text using these keywords or other clues to cope with the words they don't know. We decided we would start doing this in English for two reasons. Firstly, if we modeled it using sentences and texts in the target language, it wouldn't be clear to the students we are explicitly teaching them a separate skill. They would just rush to write down the specific words we were using in French, German, or Spanish. And secondly, just for practical reasons, we're a department of 4 languages. It's a lot easier to design one set of resources that we all use rather than have 4 different people creating 4 different resources. So what we're really trying to do is show students how you can figure out the meaning of a sentence without knowing all the words. So we gave them sentences with some non-English words. And it's like, if you look at the first example there, you might not understand the word fua, but you can probably use the word, the fact that they love maths, and then the but to figure out the science opinion is going to be contrasting. That's so they clearly don't like science. We may not know, are they saying, I hate, I detest, I despise science, but we know they don't like it. And that can be useful for multiple choice style questions or gap fill questions. So we do start with individual sentences, both having them read them and also hear them. We would call them out to show how to use that skill in listening. And then go on to show how it would apply to exam style questions by giving maybe a true or false statement they had to figure out from the question, before then moving on with 1 or 2 examples of how you would use this in a whole text. So to do this, we looked at some actual past paper texts, and we tried to look at these texts from the mindset of a grade 5 or a grade 6 student. What words would I know in this text? What words would I not know in this text? And how could I use what I know, what I don't know, combine that with the questions to figure out an answer? So for example, if we look at question 4, she would like to be promoted, continue her studies, or travel. I know that the 4th question would probably be somewhere at the end. I would scan looking for anything I could work out. I see studies, but then I see terminated, and that I see it's a past tense ending. That tells me her studies are probably over and done with, so it's not something she would like to do. I then can see stuff like receive, responsibility, working, professional. So out of the last 2 options, be promoted or to travel, that's probably going to be promoted because they're all words associated with work. And after we've modeled that with an English text, we would move on to actual specific past exam papers in the target language and show how they work in that. But I think modeling this with English texts really did help them focus on developing the skill rather than just rushing to write down new lists of vocabulary. The second thing we did then was the idea of inference skills. And one thing they really were complaining about is the notion that, well, the question asked us about the weather, but none of the words on our weather vocab list came up. So like some of them, if they saw a sentence like they put on warm hats, scarves, and gloves before going outside, some of them would focus on the word warm and say, oh, the weather was warm, amazing. Others would just see no link between, they just wouldn't even regard that sentence as possibly being relevant to the answer. So this is another skill. We did a similar approach. We used examples in English. We moved on to showing how it would apply to specific exam questions before embedding it in the target language. And we've started doing this right from year 7 onwards to get them used to it. It's a really good challenge activity. If you use textbooks or you can adopt texts you already have, it's a really good challenge activity sometimes to get students to write an inference question for a text they've already seen. And the final thing we would do is really, keeping on the theme of inference, just really stressing the idea of the exam board, they are also out to trap you. So it's really important to read the full sentence. Like if you're trying to figure out if Bob is completely satisfied with his job, you don't just read the sentence, I love my job, and think, amazing, I know the answer. You have to keep reading because they might hide a trap in the next sentence, like where he says, although I do feel the pay could be better. And also with the idea of inference, just really, I suppose, be aware that you might not see words specifically related with the questions, and you have to think about it. We also came up with a list of specific vocab areas that are relevant to inference. A lot of the time it's to do with food, clothes, weather, emotions. If you look at some past exam papers, and we've embedded those from our curriculum from year 7 onwards to make sure students are aware of that vocabulary as well. So I hope that's been useful. Thank you, and thank you very much.
Connor, that was super useful. I'm just writing furiously, thinking lots of ideas and things that I can do. I think I might have to get in touch with you because these are fantastic. And I'd never thought about using English for teaching these skills, but it makes it so crystal clear.
Yeah.
It means you can just focus on the learning of the skills. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
And thank you for being here today.
Not at all. Thank you very much for the invitation.
So we're going to now move on to listen to Joe Dale. Now, if you have never heard of Joe Dale, then you've been in a different planet. He's been there since I can remember, actually, and he's always been a technology guru. But in the last few years, he's been a lot more than that, because when the pandemic hit and we were all really, really lost, and anxiety levels rose, Joe was there to rescue everybody. And now Joe is a consultant, but one of the things that he does is that he will always help. If he sees anybody struggling, he will always help. If he sees anybody reaching out and he can't help himself, if that doesn't happen very often, but he will make sure that he finds the help for them. I'll tell you a little bit about Joe. He's, like I said, he's a languages consultant. He's worked for everybody I can think of. He's worked with the ALL, the British Council. He's worked for Microsoft and even the BBC. So what a lifetime of experience. He's interested in, obviously, technology and language learning, which as time moves on becomes more and more important for us. He has had impact internationally on teachers all over the world, and we know he works at all hours, working with teachers on the other side of the world. He's very, very well loved by the Twitter community. He's got a gazillion followers. So he's, as I just read, as The Guardian said, an MFL guru, which he is. And he was also the creator, or he's the face of MFL Twitterati. So we've got a lot to thank to Joe, and we're super grateful that you're here today. So I'll stop talking. Thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to let you make a start.
Thanks ever so much, Eleanor. That's really, really kind. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to share my screen. That's all good. Share my screen, entire screen, share system audio, click share. And you should now be able to see. Can you let me know? Can you see my presentation? Oh, just coming up now. There we are. Can you see my presentation?
We can.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm just going to speak for 5 minutes about spinawheel.com and how it can be used for promoting speaking and writing. I've just realized I've forgotten to put a full stop there, but never mind. Those are my contact details. Let's just crack on because we haven't got lots of time. So if you haven't seen Spinawheel before, it's a little bit like Wheel of Names, which lots of people in the MFL Twitterati have been using for a while now. Wheel of Names allows you to have one spinning wheel, which you can use for name pickers, putting in images as picture prompts for speaking and writing activities. You could use emojis as well, using a Chrome extension called Emoji Keyboard. You can use it for sentence starters, as Esmeralda Salgado has shown, in conjunction with a tool like Classroom Screen. But spin a wheel is a bit different because it takes it to a whole new level. You can have up to 8 wheels spinning at the same time. As you can see on the GIF that I've put on the slide right now, I'm showing you a variety of different techniques. For example, the name picker, the individual emoji icons, the 3 emoji icons per section, the sentence starters, and then adding images. So with Wheel of Names, you can add your own images. With Spin a Wheel, you can only add images from Unsplash. So that's essentially the idea. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you some examples. So I'm going to quickly click Stop Presenting, and I'm going to click on the first example like this. And I'm just going to, there we are, right click and copy link, go to the new tab, paste it in, and here we are. So this will now come up now. And this is the example that I put together when I based this on a sentence builder, which Vincent Everett had done. Typical, come on, which should appear in a second. Maybe it doesn't want to. Okay, I'm not sure why that hasn't appeared. Never mind. Let's look at another one. So this one is to do with jobs, which wasn't created by me. It was created by someone else in the MFL Twitterati. There we are. It has. Oh, for some reason, okay. For some reason, it hasn't come up with the one that I thought I had created. Never mind. Let's see if this one works. Perfect. Right. So now what you do is you go full screen and you click spin all. So as I said, this is not my one, but you get the idea what happens. So you're getting different items coming up. There we are. And then the idea would be that the students would then have to say a sentence in Spanish, French, German, or what have you, including all these different elements. You can have them appearing vertically or horizontally in that way. And then you just spin again and so on and so forth. Let's have a look at another example, which I've got here from Esmeralda. This. Okay, so as you can see here, that's Esmeralda's example. So if I again go full screen and click spin all, there we are. So then you'd have to come up with a sentence using these different items. So that's fantastic as well. And I'll just show you one more, which I've got here. This is a little tutorial from Richard Byrne, who is an EdTech guru from the States, talking about how to set this up. He's also done a really nice video clip explaining how it all works. So that's probably my 5 minutes. I'm not sure why that first one didn't work, but never mind. And if you would like this presentation, I've put it together. Oh, there we are, as a QR code and as a short URL. So it's is.gd/TMMFL icons Feb 22. And thank you so much to the organisers for this opportunity. Short and sweet, but hopefully that's useful as a way of randomly promoting speaking and writing skills. Over and out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. That was, I'm already thinking like, how am I going to get that in my lesson on Monday? And then here on Tuesday. Always practical ideas. It was brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm just going to take this moment as well, just again to thank our sponsors, teacherlovestationery.club and People Progress. We heard from them both already. And as usual, they have lots of lovely treats and ideas to help the MFL community. So up next, we have someone who is no stranger to the Teachmeet MFL Icons event, our OG coordinator, and someone who we miss as part of our team a lot. We are so happy that Bex Waker is able to join us today to present on using research-informed strategies, something I know she's very passionate about to improve study skills for pupils. So I'll hand over to you now then, Bex.
Hi, so this session is quite a whistle-stop tour really of how we can look at building expert learners using strategies informed by research on belief, mindset, habits, learning skills and metacognition. So there's a lot here. This is designed to be a whistle-stop tour to give you some ideas of what you can then go, oh, find that part interesting, I'll look at that a bit more later. So it's not in depth, it's an overview of a lot of things we could look at. This session's cut down from an hour version that I delivered in school this week. So at the end, there's a list of books that I referred to. There might be some on there that I haven't specifically referred to today, but they're all there for you to take a look at. So first thing I'm going to talk about is academic self-concept. So we've got this quote here: how powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? So we're talking about what kind of mindset, what kind of learners we need. So academic self-concept. Academic self-concept is our perception of our own abilities and our intellectual capacity. So this is built up from self-image, so the image or opinion one has of oneself, self-esteem, the value one places on oneself, and the ideal self, what one wishes we were like. So this is developed in primary school before they even reach us in secondary, and in some cases as early as even 3 to 5 years old. Now, this is really important for us because it's shown to have a bit of a knock-on effect later on in life, because students with a more positive perception of their own ability, in this particular study in 2009, were more likely to go to university, and that was even when they'd controlled the study for various other factors. This still came out as being the case. But we have a bit of a problem because self-estimates of ability are likely to be inaccurate, which means if students develop a negative self-academic concept early on and continue to reinforce this through primary and secondary school, they could really be holding themselves back in the long term. So this can be huge. It can form a vicious cycle of low achievement, negative self-academic concept, followed by more low achievement. So for those with low academic self-concept, some things may seem pointless. Approaching new topics and difficult information is more challenging for them, even if this problem is actually mostly in their heads. So on a practical level, what can we actually be doing? And these suggestions have all come from a book called Teach the Top by Megan Mansworth. Lovely book, and it's only about 150 pages long, so it's a nice accessible one to pick up. It's using we pronouns, not you, to indicate a shared learning journey. Positively highlighting our students who've met challenges, whether that's by taking photographs of their work and using them in future lessons, or whether that's the use of a visualizer. Showing you notice and remember and value, so even if that's offhand comments that's in a following lesson saying, oh, actually, Joe, you used this structure last lesson, it was really good, or so-and-so, I saw this in your work last time I looked at your books, could you share that with everybody else? A warm classroom climate full of praise, continually highlighting students' strengths. We know for feedback that we need to show our students what they need to do better, but we mustn't forget to continually highlight their strengths. Success starters, so something quick and easy that brings a can-do attitude to begin with at the start of the lesson, and supportive differentiation. And I do not mean 1,000,001 worksheets. I mean our use of scaffolding, our use of time, our removal of that scaffolding, that kind of differentiation. So the next thing I want to look at is mindset. Mindset is a particular way of thinking or a person's attitude or set of opinions about something. We may have heard of this through talking about growth mindset. That was a massive thing that we talked about a lot in schools in the past few years. The danger with growth mindset is that it becomes a yet thing. Everything becomes about, I can't do it yet. And it got very simplified. But learning mindset is the understanding that we want our learners to have, that learning is a process, a belief that they have control over their own learning, and that learning is something that they do, not which is done to them. And also that getting better at something requires perseverance, practice, and effort, which I think couldn't apply more to language learning. So what can we actually directly teach our students about mindset? We can teach them what successful learners do, how successful learners get better at speaking, how successful learners learn their vocabulary. We can explore the ups and downs of the learning journey. Okay, that things might get harder at one point and they might need to try another strategy, that it might just involve working a bit harder for a bit longer. That learning starts slow, but that practice makes progress. Some understanding of how the brain works and how cramming sessions isn't going to help them and they need to learn a lot more spaced over time. Being able to set goals that are realistic but both ambitious as well. And metacognition, which we're going to talk about a little bit more. So, learning skills, what successful learners do. Why is it useful for us to teach learning skills? Well, most students don't actually know the best ways to study, and in fact, they are often pretty poor judges of how they learn best. And I gave this example in my whole school presentation the other day, but I think this will resonate a lot more with everybody here. It's like doing a vocabulary quiz and asking students, how did you learn this vocab for your homework? And they say, well, I've read the list last night. Or I looked at it, I read it over a few times. Okay, yeah, but what did you actually do to learn it? And students get this sense that they are confident in something because they've sat there and read it over and they're quite confident by the end of them, but give them a week later and can they remember it? Probably not. And that's something a lot of students don't tend to recognise. So it's useful for us to be teaching these learning skills early on. And sometimes it's very easy for us to forget, and we say, oh, I want you to learn this vocab for homework, or I want you to revise this thing, and forget that our students don't tend to know the best ways of going out and doing this. Now, of course, if we're teaching this as early on as year 7, our students are going to be much more prepared and ready come GCSE time than when we're at GCSE saying, now let's look at study skills. Okay, it's a bit too late. Whilst doing my research around learning skills, I was reminded of Guy Claxton's Building Learning Power. Now, it has its criticisms. I'm not saying a whole school approach is exactly the way to go. And Claxton defends this actually in his book, The Future of Teaching, where he criticises, let's say, some of the more current trends in education and talks a little bit about this as well. So Building Learning Power is based on developing some learning behaviours. And some of these, I think, are things that we could be thinking about integrating into our lessons more often. So resilience, the emotional aspects of learning, which include perseverance, noticing, managing distractions and absorption, that idea of students being locked into their learning and don't give up. And we know we need our students to persevere because they're not going to pick up a language instantly. We know we want them to notice links between maybe the tenses they've been learning, or let's say ser and estar as 2 verbs in Spanish. We want them to see the links and the differences. We want them to manage the distractions around them, of course, and get into their work. Resourcefulness, so the cognitive aspects of learning, including questioning, capitalising on using their resources, making links, reasoning and imagining. Again, lots of things here that are useful to us with our language learners. Reflectiveness, the strategic aspects of learning. So that might be planning, that might be meta-learning. We're going to be talking about that in a bit. Distilling and revising. And the final one, reciprocity, the social aspects of learning. So including imitation, certainly one that we want to see in our classrooms. We want to see our learners imitating accent. Interdependence, listening and collaboration. So these are all characteristics and habits that we can encourage on a regular basis during our lessons, and they're things that we can consider in our planning, but they're not necessarily practical techniques for teaching to students. So looking at learning techniques that we can practically teach to our students, How Learning Happens is a great book which takes a selection of academic articles, sums them up, extracts the key takeaway points. So even if you've not read, so these strategies are talked about in Strengthening the Student Toolbox, an article by Dunlosky et al. But How Learning Happens sums this up really, really well. And the chapter I'd like to look at is this one on learning techniques that really work. So the article is based on 10 different learning techniques and the literature that surrounds their effectiveness. Now you can see here there's a list of 10 different types of techniques, and I'm going to quickly go over what they all are because they're not all immediately clear. So we've got elaborative interrogation, so generating an explanation for why the stated concept or fact is true. So it might be that I need to use the imperfect tense here. I need to use the imperfect tense here because it's talking about a description of something in the past. Students being able to justify that. Self-explanation, so explaining how new information is related to known information, or explaining the steps to be taken during problem solving. Summarisation of texts that need to be learned. Highlighting or underlining potentially important parts of a text whilst reading. Making a keyword mnemonic. Imagery for text, so attempting to form mental images of text materials whilst reading or listening. Simply rereading a text after initial reading. Practice testing a material that needs to be learned. Distributed practice, which is scheduling practice over time rather than in one mass session. And interleave practice, so scheduling different types of practice over a single study session. So these were the 10 that they looked at. And if we had a bit more time, I'd ask you now to think about which ones you think are the most effective, which are the least, and which come out in the middle. What we'd find is something a bit like this. Now, what we need to know here is these things are only effective if taught properly, and those things down there in low, some of which, like summarisation, you might think could be an effective technique, and they can if taught to students, not the way our students tend to just do these things. So the things that are highly effective: practice testing and distributed practice. And I think as language teachers, we might have been kind of ahead of the curve on this one, because we've always told our students that they need to learn their vocabulary. They need to test themselves on their vocabulary by using things like look, cover, write, check, and they can't just do it all in the hour the night before. So those high techniques probably we've been doing. In the middle, we've got that elaborative interrogation, so questioning yourself to be able to explain why something is the case. Self-explanation and interleaved practice, so doing more than one thing within the same study session. And then down there in the low, highlighting and underlining. Oh, how our students tend to love highlighting and underlining. The main problem with this is they don't know how to do it, and we end up with just lovely books that are covered in highlighter pen and nothing that's not. So highlighting and underlining, whilst can be a useful technique, probably isn't in many cases. Summarization, rereading like I referred to earlier, and creating images for text, depending on how it's done. Again, if this is done well and done effectively, that one can work. But in the way that our students often do it, it's not the case. So the learning scientists are a great place that we can go to for more information about this kind of thing. They've got lots on their website, including posters a bit like this one here, and videos which explain the techniques. So in my session at school the other day, I did show an 8-minute video that they've got on their website about these 6 techniques: elaboration, retrieval practice, space practice, dual coding, interleaving, and concrete examples, and showing students how to relate that to their studies. They've also got some really good blog posts, so you can see over here, catering to learning styles isn't just ineffective, it can harm learning. Unlearning neuromyths, encouraging students to adopt effective learning strategies, and showing students how metacognition works. Lots and lots of really good posts there that are well worth checking out, and things that we could be sharing with our students. I went on a course with the learning scientists a few years ago, and it was a 2-day course, and it was really fascinating. But they've got so much that you can share with students, especially as I find students sometimes need someone else to tell them. So it's all well and good that I've been saying for so much time, don't just learn it all in one session, don't try and cram it all in the same day. Hearing it from someone else that says, no, look, science, research says this isn't going to work, guys, you need to try something else, might be another way of approaching it. So I highly recommend checking out the Learning Scientist. So the final thing I want to look at in this section before looking at how to embed this as habits is metacognition. So this quote here, and I'll read it because I'm not sure how easily some of you can see it. It says, a metacognitive learner is one who has knowledge and control over cognitive skills and processes. They understand how learning happens, and they are able to actively and independently apply this understanding to help them learn in the most effective way and to sustain that learning into the future. Sounds ideal. So let's look at what we can do to achieve that. So training our students to be metacognitive, we can use a structure a bit like this. We can ask students to identify what they understand about the task or the information they've been given. We can ask them to make links between this and things they've seen before. Identify the best strategy or approach that they can use to complete the task, and then finally evaluate how successful the strategy they chose was. So our aim with metacognition is to train our students to ask themselves a series of internal questions when they're working. And we can use guided reflections such as these from the Metacognition Handbook by Jennifer Webb to help us with this. The Metacognition Handbook is another really good book. It's a nice short one, again, under the 150-page mark, nice and accessible. And actually, less than half of that is the kind of content. The rest of it is case studies of how it's been applied in schools. So I'll just go through some of these because, again, I realise they probably won't be that visible to some people. So we could do a reflection after a task. So today I've learned about, I found this difficult because, next time I come across this, I will. This will improve my work because I found this thing relatively easy because, and I will build on this future success by. A reflection on their knowledge. So for me, the most fascinating thing I've learned today is the critical knowledge about this topic is, as a learner, I've developed because, there's more in that top right one. Something for looking after and before an assessment, down in the bottom left. So I predict I will do well on this because I think I'm going to struggle if this particular thing comes up, because during the assessment I need to remember to. I'm feeling motivated to do this assessment because I know it's important, because last time I did an assessment in French, Spanish, I did this, so I'd like to improve by, that kind of thing. And looking at exam skills. So the most important exam skill I've learned, this will have a positive impact on my work because. So a constant stream of questions our students can ask themselves about their learning to help them reflect on what they've done well and what they need to change in future. So there are other metacognitive principles that we could consider. For example, thinking aloud as we're modelling a task, or using the I, we, you method, where we first model the task, thinking aloud, then model whilst questioning the students on how to do it, and finally them completing the task themselves. So we can do this with lots of different things, but with writing, for example, this is a key thing. This is a really good sentence. It's got these features in it. Then write one with the students. Okay, what connective could I put here? What verb do I need next? Those kind of things, and then them doing it themselves. A work review, the idea of, after they've completed their work, going through it and writing questions to themselves or to you in the margin. So, could I have used a better word here? Miss, have I got this verb ending right? What could I have used here instead of repeating me gusta a few times? These kinds of things that they could reflect on their work. And I'm not going to go over all of these, but an exam wrapper, this is something I've not used before, but I've seen around on Twitter and I like the idea of, which is essentially a back and front cover to an exam paper, which asks the students these metacognitive questions before and after the assessment. So things like, I think this is going to come up on this paper. I think I'm going to do okay at this thing. Last time I did a listening assessment, for example, this happened, so this time I need to do whatever differently. Ask them to consider those things first. Then on the back, there's some questions, and there's some questions for following their feedback. So this went as well as I expected. I didn't do as well at this. I need to do this to prepare better next time. So there's a lot of detail on all of these, as well as some case studies, like I said, in the Metacognition Handbook. So the last thing I'm going to mention to you is how to embed all of these as habits for our students. This all comes from Harry Fletcher Wood's book, Habits of Success, and he uses this model here, which is simplify. So he suggests we specify the change, we pick a priority, and then choose a powerful habit or a small step that students can use to achieve it. We then need to inspire and motivate our students to value that change. We need to plan the change, ask them to commit to action, initiate action and make starting it easy, and follow it up and help students keep going. Now, this example that I'm going to use here, which comes straight from the book, was how he used it for his A-level politics and getting them to read the news. Now, I think we could apply this in two ways. One, A-level students and reading news in target language, or at least trying to keep up with events that are happening in target language countries, and also for lower down the school, our vocabulary learning. So his example, he wanted them to read the news more. They weren't doing it on their own, so he started setting a weekly quiz in which they needed to score 6 out of 10. The habit was simple. There was a clear cue, the quiz. The concrete task was to read the news. Oh, and just realised I'm on the wrong side. Concrete task was to read the news. The 10-minute quiz happened weekly, and their test scores made it obvious if they were doing it. Now, it was also collaborative because students worked together to predict which stories would be on the quiz. They were given suggested sites to read the news, but it was flexible as to what they actually used. And it encouraged a wider change because they became more interested in what they were reading and started using these stories in their essays. So I can see that working both with vocabulary testing and with encouraging our A-level students to be into current news. So other things included breaking the habit down into small steps, and I'll go over this fairly quickly now. Creating a sense of urgency, giving students a reason why they have to do it soon. Make it easy to start. Okay, here's your links. You need to go away and use these websites to start with. It helps us to assess our students' progress rapidly if we're seeing it in small steps rather than bigger, longer tasks. And we can highlight the small wins to really encourage our students along the way. Now, what I want to emphasise is that today's session really was all about a whistle-stop tour of a few areas, giving you a few small things to try, but also showing you there's loads more out there to look into. So any one of these sections could have been a session probably in its own right. Now I realise I've listed a lot of books at the end of this session, and I realise that might not be for everyone. So on the screen I'm signposting some podcasts. Up there is my own From Page to Practice, and then I've also chosen Naylor's Natter and Becoming Educated. Between the three podcasts, they have covered at least one, if not a number of these books across them. You'll get to hear from the authors, and you'll also get to hear from readers about how they've applied it to their practice. So that is just a list of the books, and I'm done.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bex. That was fabulous. I can, as a year 11 tutor, as well as a year 11 teacher, I'm sort of putting both hats on here and thinking about how I could apply it both for those students, but then also, like you say, getting it started younger down the school as well, so that it has more of an impact going forward. So thank you very, very much. Last but not least, we have Vanessa Macia Domene, who's wrapping things up for us today by talking about a fun game that we can use in our lessons as part of retrieval practice. I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you very much, Vanessa. Take it away. Oh, I think you're still on mute, Vanessa.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, yeah, thank you.
Okay, yes. I'm going to present a game that is ideal for retrieval practice. For that, I'm going to use a website that is called Bamboozle, and then you can create questions with a game. So it's very great for retrieval because obviously in this question, you can bring back content that you have been teaching in the past session. Okay, and it only requires one screen. So you only have to project to the student, and it has a very interesting team game. And I like that it's like a team competition. So with the free version, you can create up to 4 teams. It's free. Again, it has a free version and paid version, but with the free version I have been using for a long time, and it's enough. You can use online or in the classroom, and it's suitable for all ages. I can use with my primary student and even for A-levels or with my adults learning. So as I say, with the basic version, to be honest, you don't really need much. The only limitation is like the maximum number of 4 teams. And also I recently paid the upgrade is because I can import data from Quizlet or Kahoot, and it allows more than 18. So I'm going to show you how it looks, this game. For example, this one is one that I create for Christmas. So this is what you project to the students. So you divided the classroom in, as I say, with the free version, you have up to 14. So the student have to say a number. That is also good to practice number and improve speaking skill. So team 1, for example, have to choose a number, I don't know, número 6. And then the question will come movie, and they have to say a movie in Spanish. So if they got right, then they get the point. And if not, they have 0 point. And again, with the paid version, you can modify the point and all of that. For some reason, I cannot accept because with the sharing, the toolbar is in the middle, but if it's right, you say okay, and then team 1 automatically gives some points. As I say, unfortunately, I cannot show. And then we be team 2. No, I think I can do Christmas tree. If they got Christmas tree and it's okay, then it gets the point, and then will be the other team, another one. This one is the one that I cannot click, but you have an idea how it works. And the good thing is, like in some of the boxes, it's not like a question. Some of the boxes, they are going to have like a lost 20 points, or swap the point with another team. So it's quite like a booklet, because in the sense that even the team that get the maximum answer, they are not going to be the winner, because until the last minute there is quite of excitement. This is another one that I use for A-level. This is called Ocho Apellidos Vascos, and it's the same. You will press one of the number and see lose 10 points. And then team 2, they need to say a number, I don't know, número 4, and then the question will come, go to the last place. Again, team 3, and they say a number, número 1, ¿a qué se dedica Rafa? Again, if they got right, you get the point. If not, it's like, oops. Okay. So other thing that I really like is because it's very easy to create. So you need to log in and create a teacher account. And once you have the teacher account, you will have this screen. And you go to games. There is a lot of games that they have been created for other teachers. So you can search for topic, or you can search, I don't know, for example, for a book, Viva Uno, for example. And let's see if someone has already created a test with the Viva Uno. I cannot see now, but it was one quiz of this one that is for Viva Uno, or I don't know, what are you teaching? Greeting, colors. So you can choose the language. They have a lot of languages to choose. And to create your own game, again, is very easy. You just go into a game. You create your, for some reason, I'm not signing. For some reason, I have log out. You will have to log in, sorry. And then in my library, you have all of these are all the game that I have created, and it's super easy to create a game. You just press new game, okay? And then you put, I don't know, let's create one of Tiempo Libre. And then what it's about, free time. You choose your language, let's do Spanish. And then you can put a gift for your cover, free time. Just pick one, this one, for example. So this is our one, and then make a game. And then you just introduce your question. Like, I don't know, salir con mis amigos. And what is the answer of salir con mis amigos? Go out with friends. And then you can put this thing that the student love it, that is like gift, that they can be with the question or when they answer. So let's put with the answer, and you can put like friends, and you have gift, a sticker, and test. I don't know, you can choose one of these, okay? And then you save. And you can continue creating the question. As I say, what I like it is you pay the premium version. This is the game that I have created. You can import. You have a new game again here. You have the option of import from Quizlet or Kahoot. So once we have the game, is when you will choose how many teams you want to do. So when you play, it's like when you configure it. Again, with the free version, you only can play this type. That is the last one. So in here, you have to choose how many teams you want to play. Because I have like the premium version, I can do up to 8, but you will have maximum 4. And then you can choose if this GIF or memes are coming, or just like a normal quiz. And then in option, you can also select some timing. I mean, you can customize the background, a lot of things that you can customize, but to be honest, I only play like the classic one, and should be something like that. And I can tell you that I have tried, as I said, from primary to adults, and they really are crazy about the game. They are all the time begging me, when are we playing? When are we playing? So I really recommend you to use. And if you have a question about how to set the game or whatever, you can reach me on Twitter or by email. And that's all. I think my 5 minutes have been a little bit over my 5 minutes.
That is fine. Thank you so much. It was such a great presentation and so great to see all those ideas. It's worth the extra couple of minutes. Thank you so much. That just leaves me to kind of wrap things up for today, really. So here are the thank yous. Thank you so much to our sponsors, TLS.Stationery Club and People Progress. Again, as usual, without their support, these events would not be possible. I want to thank our TMMFL Icons team, Hannah, Elena, Adam, and Esmeralda, who isn't here with us today. And thank you to Tom and Steph, who do so much work for us behind the scenes as well. Thank you to everyone who's joined us, either via the Twitter feed, via YouTube, or who's catching up with this presentation through our recording. If you've got colleagues and friends in the MFL community who didn't manage to make it live this morning, we will be making the recording available, and we'll share links to that via our Twitter feed. And finally, some exciting news. We are having our first face-to-face event. It'll be taking place on the 18th of June, which for those of you doing AQA Spanish is the day after the final exam. So it's a perfect opportunity to get together, have a few bevs and celebrate. It'll be in Manchester, up north, which I'm pleased about. So we will be looking for speakers to come along and present shorter or longer Teachmeet sessions at the event in Manchester in June. And we would also love, obviously, as many people as possible to come along. So we'll be in touch, obviously, via social media about tickets and stuff in the future, but get that date in your diary now, 18th of June. It's a Saturday. There will be a free bar at the face-to-face event, which is fantastic. We'll have a brilliant lineup, I'm sure, for you on that day, and I'm sure there'll be a few of us staying over that night for a few drinks and a night out afterwards as well. So it'll be a lovely social affair, a relaxed affair, and an opportunity to get together at the end of the year, celebrate our successes, and think about what our plans will be for the following year, whilst magpieing ideas from everyone who will be there. So we'll be in touch with more details about that soon. Thank you very much for today. Happy Saturday, and enjoy a well-earned rest this weekend. Bye, everyone.